Good evening. Welcome, everybody. How are you doing today, Mani?
Very well, yourself?
Yes, very good. 1st of
Yeah, it's a nice
December.
day.
Eh?
Yeah, new month, new season in New Zealand. We are officially now in summertime, so yeah, it's a new beginning. We can say that just
That's
before we
right.
begin, just before we begin a new year. So it's great to be here.
Yeah, and this coincide with some of the restrictions being lifted from Friday. So Auckland is going to, the whole New Zealand actually is going to enter in a new system, and will be less restrictions in some regions. So it's going to be really good for all of us to be able to enjoy more the outside, the sunshine, and the summer, as Mani said, is already here. And tonight is our pleasure to start another meeting. Even though it's night, is light, is day almost like daylight outside. Is very clear, very interesting summer in New Zealand, and it's a really nice weather. And it's always good to be here, get in touch with everybody, be connected, and have this opportunity to study spiritism and be together with everybody that is interested in doing the same study as us. So thank you very much for being here tonight, or tomorrow morning, or in the afternoon, whichever time zone you are at the moment. We really appreciate it. In terms of news of our group, no much happening at the moment apart from business as usual. And the only thing we know for sure is that we're not going back in person this year in 2021. So we'll go back in 2022, just because many restrictions are still in place, and it'll be better for us to keep online and go back when it's safe and when things are more settled for we to keep going. So we still will keep with our meetings. So tonight will be, as usual, studying um, Gospel according to Spiritism and Spirit's book as well. But we will start with our inspirational reading. And I'll put here for you, for everybody to see as well. So let's see. And I'll put a little bit bigger so we can all read. This is from Christian Agenda. And the lesson tonight is called Rise Above. When looking at a block of crude stone, do not dwell on its possible weight. Remember the perfect statue that will emerge from it. When contemplating the difficulties of sowing, do not let the fears of torrential storm or blight detain you. Think of the grain that will overflow in the granary. When facing a storm, do not lose yourself in lamentations. Meditate upon the benefits that its passage will bring. When faced with hard work, do not be afraid of the copious sweat it will produce. Centralize your expectations on the goods that will result from it. Do not be preoccupied with the heat of the forge. Look towards the useful articles with which it will furnish your life. Do not only picture only the dangers of illness. Reflect upon the joy and possibility of being able to cure. If you are governed effectively by the higher ideal, forget the friend who deserted, the wife who fled, the ungrateful companion, or the difficult relative. All of them are learning and passing by, just as you are. What matters is the intensification of light, the progress of truth, and the victory of goodness. Wow, very nice um, lesson to start with, reminding us to look and pay attention and focus our energy on the good side of things and not on the negative one. So it's really good
Yeah,
to start the night
to
with this
rise
message.
to rise
Sorry?
above to
Yes,
rise
yes.
above.
Yep, that's exactly the name of the lesson. So now let's do our initial prayer. Um, I'll see if I have the. Okay, hold on.
And while you're
Let me
checking,
finish.
I was just
Mhm.
checking on our social media, and of course everything is
Yeah.
working. So also just a reminder for those who are in Instagram, you can't probably see our faces, but you'll be able to hear. So if you have any questions or comments, you can just put them there, and we will can share that with the people here on live because we have a different setup from Instagram. So just I can see that Fran is there. Fran is watching us. So hi, Fran.
Hello. Awesome. All right. So now let's do our initial prayer and prepare ourselves for the lessons of tonight. Dear God, Jesus, our Master, our beautiful example of love and charity, spiritual guides that inspire us, that help us. We are happy to be here tonight. We are happy for this opportunity to study a bit more, because the more we study, the more we can remind ourselves of what we know already, and then we'll be able to put in practice these beautiful lessons from Jesus that help us in our journey and consequently helps everybody around us. That we can be in harmony, in peace during this meeting, making the most of this opportunity. And would you like to ask permission to start another Allan Kardec meeting? Thank you. So be it. Right. So now that we did our initial prayer, we did our um, initial reading as well. We initiate our meeting so we can go to the books that we've been studying for a while now. And let's see if I can share the right one. Okay.
Yeah. So from memory, last week we finished chapter 17, and now
Yeah.
we are
It's 18.
on chapter 18.
Correct. Starting a brand new chapter.
A new
And
month, a new month, new season, new chapter.
right. That's exciting, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes.
And tonight, basically, the first that we're gonna study is the parable of the wedding feast. The letter here I know is really small, but the ones of the reading are bigger. So hopefully everybody will be able to see. So Mani, would you like? I'll put bigger. Can you see bigger now, Mani?
Yes, yes, but I can read from my part here too.
Oh,
I
sorry.
can read from my book. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
So
That's okay.
hopefully,
Would you like me to
would you
go and
like to?
start reading?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay, you've done the first reading and the prayer, so we share the load. So this one
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
parable of the wedding feast. Number one. Speaking further through parables, Jesus said to them, "The kingdom of heaven is like a king who, wanting to give his son a wedding feast, sent his servants to call on those whom he invited. However, they refused to come. The king then sent other servants with orders to tell the invitees or the guests, 'I have prepared the feast. I have slaughtered my cattle and what I have ordered to be fattened. Everything is ready. Come to the wedding feast. However, they were not concerned, and one went to his house in the country, and another to his business. The others seized his servants and killed them after having badly mistreated them. When the king found out, he was filled with anger, and having sent his armies, he exterminated those murderers and burned their city. He then said to his servants, "The wedding feast has been fully prepared, but those who had been invited were not worthy of it. So go to the crossroads and call to the wedding feast all whom you meet." His servants then went into the streets and gathered all those whom they met, both good and bad. And the wedding hall was filled with people who sat at the table. The king then entered to see those who were at the table, and noticing a man who was not wearing a wedding garment, he said to him, "My friend, why have you come in without a wedding garment?" The man remained silent. Then the king told his servants, "Bind his man, untie his hands and feet, and cast him into outer darkness. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth, for many are called, but few are chosen." As in Matthew chapter 22, article or items 1 to 14. I'll continue reading because it's just an explanation about this parable, which is going to explain to us, if we take it
Yeah.
at face value, it doesn't make much sense, especially come to nowadays. But on the item two, the spirits come to explain to us that these believers smile at this seemingly childish, naive parable because they cannot understand why so many problems could arise regarding a feast, and even less why the invitees or the guests would extend their resistance to the point of massacring or murdering those sent by the master of the house. Parables, they say, are of course figurative, but even so, they shouldn't go beyond the limits of plausibility. The same can be said about all allegories as well as the most ingenious fables if one does remove their outer covering in order to find their hidden meaning. Jesus composed his with the commonest habits of life and adapted them to the customs and character of the people to whom he spoke. Most of his parables were meant to instill in the masses the idea of the spiritual life. Their meaning often seems unintelligible only because they are not regarded from this point of view. So, just a little pause here, just to explain that just on this sentence that we saw, is actually part of a whole chapter on this book that we're reading, the Gospel According to Spiritism, on chapter 24. Which is called "Do Not Hide the Lamp Under the Bushel." It is explained why Jesus spoke in parables and why that was the way that he found to explain his messages and his teachings, using the parables um, so people could relate to them back in the days. And if you read them now and think, well, so why would people make a big fuss about a party, a feast, like, to why does it seems a little bit over the top, but as we're going to be hearing now, we're going to understand why Jesus spoke on those terms, so people could actually understand what he was talking about, and sometimes not necessarily understand, but as the message is telling us, is stealing, the idea of spiritual life, is trying to giving us a hint of the spiritual life, because if we look at it and try to understand it from material point of view, it's not going to make much sense. So this is an explanation, but we're going to get there eventually. We are just on chapter 18, but on chapter 24 there is a whole chapter about explaining why did Jesus apparently hid the lamp under the bushel, not telling the whole truth at once to the, especially to
Yeah.
the people that were living back then 2000 years ago. So I just, sorry that if I interrupted this reading, but just to explain a little bit about this part of the passage. Do you have anything else to add, Osioni, or so
No,
far,
not
or?
yet. It's just to tell everybody, if the parable was a little bit shocking, because at first, if we take literally, we can say, oh, that's not possible. That doesn't make any sense. That's going to make lots of sense soon when it's bit by bit is explained and is very wise and we can understand well, but we can't take it literally. We'll have to
Yeah.
take in a viewpoint of the spiritual life, as Mani mentioned. And
If you
but
take
it's
it,
very
if you
wise and will make lots of sense. So bear with us. We'll get there.
if we because if we take literally, it's going to be very much like Game of Thrones,
Right.
with
Yeah.
a lot of violence and a lot of vengeance. But it's not
Exactly.
quite like that. Yeah,
No.
you have to look at it on a spiritual point of view. So continuing from in this particular parable. In this particular parable, Jesus compares the kingdom of heaven, where everything is joy and happiness, to a feast. In speaking of the first invitees, or the first guests, he makes an allusion to the Hebrews, whom God called first to the knowledge of his law, which was, of course, the first revelation of God. Those sent by the Master are the prophets, who came to exhort them to follow the way of true happiness. But their words were listened to very little. Their warnings were scorned or made fun of. Many were even massacred or killed, like the servants in the parable. The guests, the invitees, who made excuses under the pretext of looking after their feuds and their businesses, symbolize persons of the world who, absorbed by earthly matters, are indifferent towards heavenly matters or towards the spiritual life. Among the Jews back then, it was a common belief that their nation was to achieve supremacy of over all others. Had not God, in fact, promised Abraham that his progeny, or his descendants, would cover the entire earth? So I'll read that again. Had not God, in fact, promised Abraham that his descendants would cover the entire earth? However, as always, taking the form for the substance, they believe in an actual material domination. Before the coming of Christ, and except for the Hebrews, all other peoples were idolatrous and polytheistic, so basically pagans. In a few extraordinary individuals, sorry, if a few extraordinary individuals conceive of the idea of divine oneness, this idea remained in the state of a personal theory and was in no way accepted as a fundamental truth, except by a few initiates who hid their knowledge under a veil of mystery impenetrable by the masses. The Hebrews were the first to publicly practice monotheism. It was to them that God transmitted his divine law, first through Moses, then through Jesus. From this tiny focal point began the light that was to spread over the entire world, triumph over paganism, and give Abraham a spiritual progeny or spiritual descendancy, as numerous as the stars in the firmament, or as numerous as the stars in the sky. Although they had rejected idolatry, the Jews had neglected the moral law, um, adhering instead to the easier practice of outward forms. Evil had reached its peak. The nation had been conquered and was split by factions and divided by sects. This belief itself had ever even entered the sanctuary. It was then that Jesus appeared. He was sent to remind them to observe the law and to open to them the new horizons of the future life. The first to be invited to the great banquet of universal faith, they rejected the word of the heavenly Messiah and put him to death. Thus, they lost the fruit they were to have reaped from their own initiative. Should I continue, Osioni, or
Maybe we do a little break for
pause?
comments, right? Because it's a bit,
Mm-hmm.
it is very long.
Would you like to
So,
comment something? Or
yeah, I think I can start. So now comes the explanation that this wedding feast is actually referring to the kingdom of heaven, where joy and happiness exist. And in a way, we all invited for the kingdom of heaven every single day, right? And we invited by Jesus, and we know of Jesus' teachings, and we know of Jesus' words. And now we start making a bit of sense why um, why people were invited, but they didn't accept the invitation. And then that's why they couldn't get to the blessings or to the things that that wedding feast, which was the allegory, was actually the kingdom of heaven, which is actually the Jesus teachings and the law of justice, charity, and all the laws that we know. But many of us, and in that time, many of them were not prepared to accept or prefer to avoid or prefer to deny. And yeah, the opportunities, they come and go, but at that time they rejected this opportunity. So I think to that part
Yeah,
is
I
what it
think it
says.
comes a little bit to explain as well that they were more worried about the external or the material part of it, because
Mm,
they were
yeah,
expecting to have the supremacy over the material world, the promised land,
right.
the happiness in this world, and to conquer others. So they were not really, in a way, expecting to receive this joy and happiness in the kingdom of heaven. So that's what he's saying, that they were the first to be invited to receive the message from God, um, or this evolution of the understanding of God, because prior to the message received by Moses, all the faith in all the that people had was more towards the elements of nature. They were polytheists. They believed in many gods. They didn't believe in the oneness of God. And the first ones to receive that message were the Hebrew people through the
Mhm.
revelation of Moses. But they were more, they were expecting more the material rewards, the supremacy on earth, and to the promise of the promised land, but not really understanding the full reach of the law, the divine law, which is the law of love. Even then, they're saying so he sent the prophets, even the prophets that came
Mm,
before Jesus, that's the ones that started to bring more ideas or divine ideas, like even in Greece, like Socrates and Plato, and then even just before Jesus, when John the Baptist was beheaded as well. So because they were not understanding, they were not accepting that this possibility of the joy came from a spiritual point of view and not a material point of view. So that's what he's comparing um, the first people that were invited to the feast or to the kingdom of heaven. They not only didn't accept the invitation, but they actually killed those who were invited, those who were bringing the message of a future life of happiness in the spiritual world, in the kingdom of heaven. They were not accepted. They were refused, and they were scorned, like they said. They were made fun of, and eventually they got killed, just like the servants in that parable. So I think that's where we kind of stopped, to
yeah.
that first part, the first to be invited. They
Mm-hmm.
rejected the word of the God. So because we need to understand the spiritual point of view of the message of Jesus, of God through Jesus.
Right.
Hmm.
Do you
Would
want
you
to
like me to
continue
continue?
reading? I can. Yeah.
Yeah, I can continue.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. It
Sorry,
would
are
be
you
unjust, however.
continuing? Oh, yeah. Okay, sorry, was a
It would
delay. Yep, you go.
It would be unjust, however, to accuse an entire people for such a state of affairs. So he's not blaming just the Hebrews, okay, or all the Hebrews. Their responsibility fell mainly to the Pharisees and Sadducees, who sacrificed their nation due to the pride of fanaticism or extremism, or radicalism that we can so much see in these days, of the former, so the fanaticisms of the Pharisees, and the disbelief of the Sadducees. They are the ones whom Jesus compares above all to the invitees or the guests who refuse to come to the wedding feast. He then adds, the master, upon seeing this, ordered all those who could be found in the crossroads to be invited, both good and bad. With this, he wanted to say that the word will be proclaimed to all other peoples, both pagan and idolatrous, and that upon believing, they would be admitted to the feast in the place of those who had been invited first. So after that, everybody got invited to the feast. So everybody, the word to reach the kingdom of heaven was available to everyone. Nevertheless, it is not enough simply to be invited. It is not enough simply to take the name Christian, nor to sit at the table to take part in the heavenly banquet. Before anything else, and as an express condition, it is necessary to be dressed in a wedding garment, which means to have a pure heart and to practice the law according to its spirit. This law is contained in its entirety in these words: without charity, there is no salvation. Among all those who hear the divine word, however, how few there are who keep it and practice it. How few make themselves worthy to enter the kingdom of heaven. That is why Jesus said, many will be called, but few chosen.
Yeah, I really like that part when it says that the master, upon seeing this, order all those who could be found to be invited, both good and bad. So everybody, and that's, as Manny said, everybody's invited. So in the parable, everybody was invited. In our daily lives, we are all invited every single day, right? Because we all have access to the information, we all know about Jesus, and we all know about divine laws and everything that we need to know. Of course, people may know in different shapes or different formatting, and that's fine as well. So that is not, it's not only one pathway to, for us to improve ourselves and to be better. There are many different ones, but the invitation is really for everybody, even though not in the same way, but we all are invited. And
Yeah,
the second, oh, sorry.
that's okay.
In the second point, when it mentions that the guest was not dressed appropriately for the wedding, so for the occasion, we may sometimes say that we are religious, that we follow Jesus, that we love Jesus, but what really matters are the actions, are how we practice, how we apply what we know. So it's not enough to know, to have the knowledge. The most important is actually do. And the do is really the charity, is to love our neighbors, is to love our enemies, and all of those things that we try, right? So I believe most of us, if we are here, if we are trying to learn, we try, but we not always achieve it. So always paying attention on that. It's important to learn, it's important to know, but what really counts are our actions, our thoughts, and how we apply the knowledge that we already acquired throughout our lives.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting that even with that comparison that he makes, of course, he's talking about a wedding garment or some clothes, but as we saw in the first part of this study, that he's not talking about the physical, he's talking about the spiritual. So he's not actually talking about the garment, he's talking
Mhm.
about something that we wear, but not what we wear physically, but uh, we use, we show ourselves, because spiritism shows us that all our thoughts and our emotions, they are expressed through our perispirits, they are expressed through the way we think, the way we behave. They're shown to us in a different light, so you cannot hide who you really are. We are able to hide in this world through, through nice clothes, through makeup, through plastic surgery.
Mhm.
I'm not saying that everybody that has plastic surgery is hiding something, but I'm just saying that any physical things that we can use, or even hide sometimes nowadays through a camera. We can all use a filter here and be nice and talking about spiritism, and but our reality is shown to all the spiritual world to be seen. So we're not talking about actual physical uh, clothes. Is actually what you think, what you feel, and what you do that represent who you are. And he's very careful to make that distinction. Can you go back a couple of slides, please, Osioni?
Yep,
Or just one
sure.
slide, actually?
Oh,
Just one, I think. Yeah, one more, one back, one forward. Yeah, he just says he's careful to explain to everybody that it's not. Uh, Sorry, the one previous. It is unjust. It would be unjust.
oh yes, okay. It will be
Yeah,
unjust. Yeah.
it would be unjust. Yeah, he's very careful to make it clear that he's not accusing all the Hebrews of this behavior, because not all of
Mm-hmm.
them wear that garment, the same garment, or not all of them had these ideas. Only a few sections of the Hebrews that believe like that, especially, but not all of them, not all the Pharisees and not all the Sadducees. They were fanatics, and they were disbelievers, and they had pride. So it is very clear to say that not because you belong to a certain uh, category of creed or race or belief is that you are not welcome to the feast. It's just depending of how you acted and how you behave. In this case, those who were Pharisees and Sadducees that were proud and fanatics, or with a lack of belief as well. So it's important to make that distinction. It's not everyone, no, not all the Hebrews, only those who were not. Um, they were so fanatic and so proud that they were prosecuting the people that the prophets and the people that came to bring the Jesus' word as well. So we have to be careful not to box, because we have this tendency
Mm-hmm.
of putting things into little boxes and little categories. But I
Yeah.
think the spirits is very, of course, being a superior spirit, is very careful to make sure that we understand that, and we can't just read it and pass it through. It's important that we pointed out how important it is to have this type of indulgence and tolerance and empathy as well, not just to be accusing, like one would normally do. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, very much. Yeah, I think it's a very beautiful lesson, a good reminder for
Hmm.
us, and to yeah, to know that we don't need to wait for the invitation. We are invited already for a long, long
Because
time.
it's
Imagine.
it's it's we've been called for the last 2,000 years, and especially now where
Right.
we have access to so much information. On here we are on a Wednesday evening in New Zealand, but other times in different parts of the world. But we are in the same city, but we are far away physically, but we are having this conversation, reaching other people. So not only spiritism, but there are many different messages and examples of the divine word that can be reached and can be felt and practiced. But so there is no excuse, because when he says many will be called but few chosen, exactly the chosen part, it depends on us. We have to
Mhm.
choose to be chosen. We have to choose to behave in a way or to live in a way that we have the merit, we have the reward of being chosen. But the calling is out there. So it's not because we're going to be chosen. We have to make ourselves choose this reality and the spiritual life and the examples that Jesus left. Like he's saying, the true, without charity there's no salvation. Have a pure heart, practice the law according to the message of Jesus, and that's what will make us worthy of being chosen.
Yeah. And it's not just a simple RSVP and show up to the wedding. It's a everyday task, isn't it? It's something that we are going to be doing not only in this life, but all the next upcoming lives as well. But it's a choice that we make to be committed to this yeah, to this pathway, pretty much to this journey. And there'll be moments that we are more committed, some moments we are less, but we need to always keep in mind and have that willingness to keep going and to not give up. So yeah, very beautiful lesson, very, very beautiful. At the start it's a little bit, can be a little bit shocking, right? Can be a little bit, what's going on, what is it telling
Yeah.
us, but it's
So
really well
much, so
explained.
much, so much violence and so much, just for one feast. It's, if you don't want to go to the feast, don't go. But yeah, there is a reason why he spoke like that, and yeah, it's, when you look like that, look at it as a take the symbology and the meaning of the what he's saying, looking from a spiritual point of view, it makes it a little bit easier for us to understand and not to fall into the trap.
Yeah, makes lots of sense. Cool. So I think we can go now to the next lesson, the narrow door. I can read that one, Money, give you a break. Yep.
Okay.
Enter through the narrow door, for the door to perdition is wild, and the path leading to it is broad, and there are many who enter through it. How small is the door to life? How narrow is the path that leads to it? And how few there are who find it. Matthew 7:13-14. Someone asked him this question, Lord, will only a few be saved? He responds, strive to enter through the narrow door, for I assure you that many will try to enter through it, but will not be able to. And once the father of the family has entered and shut the door, and you, being outside, start knocking by saying, Lord, open to us, he will answer, I do not know where you have come from. Then you will say, we ate and drank with you, and you taught us in our public squares. And he will respond, I do not know where you have come from. Away from me, all of you, all you who have practiced iniquity. Then there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth when you see Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and all the prophets in the kingdom of God, while you yourselves have been thrown out. Many will come from the east and from the west, from the north and from the south, those who will have a place at the feast in the kingdom of God. Hence, those who are last shall be first, and those who are first shall be last. Luke 13:23-30. The door to perdition is wild because the evil passions are many, and the pathway to evil is frequent by most. The door to salvation is narrow because those who want to go through it must make a great effort to control themselves in order to overcome their evil tendencies, and few resign themselves to do so. It is the complement to the maxim. Many are called, but few are chosen. Such is the current state of the earth's humankind, because since the earth is a world of expiation and evil predominates on it. When it is transformed, the pathway to goodness will be one of the most frequent. These words, therefore, should be understood in the relative sense and not in the absolute sense, if this were to be normal state of humankind. God would have intentionally commanded the vast majority of individuals to perdition, an unacceptable supposition if one acknowledged God as entirely just and good. But of what evil actions could humankind make itself guilty to deserve such a sad fate in its present and in its future, if it has been completely regulated to the earth, and if the soul has not had other existences? Why there are so many obstacles thrown along the way? Why such a narrow door that allows only a small number to pass through if the soul's faith is sealed forever after death? In this way, with only one lifetime, humankind is in constant conflict both with itself and the justice of God, with the prior existence of the soul and the plurality of worlds. The horizon ends is broadened. Light is shed on the most obscure points of the faith. The present and future are in solidarity with the past. Only then can one understand all the depth, all the truth, and all the wisdom of Christians' maxims. Wow, another powerful. Oops, sorry guys, I got lost here on the control. Another powerful lesson, right? Yeah, pretty much. Again, it's talking about many will be called, but few will be chosen, because we need to choose to go through the narrow door if we want to improve ourselves, if we want to evolve. But of course, the wild door is much easier. All the material facilities, the material temptations are material passions, as it says here, are way more attractive to us. On the other hand, practicing our charity, kindness, generosity, and helping others is harder, is way harder, because we still having ourselves many of the vices, or we could even say all of them. We're still dealing with that. So the lesson is really, if we want to improve ourselves, we need to go through the narrow door, and narrow door to the challenge, the difficulties, with resignation, and trying to be better every single day. Do you have any
Yeah,
comments on me?
yeah. I think it's interesting that if you go to the item 4, after someone asks him the question, Lord, will only a few be saved? He doesn't say yes or no. He doesn't say yes, only a few
Mhm.
will be saved, or no, may everyone will be saved. He keeps it us to ponder and think. He says that strive to enter through the narrow door. You have to strive to enter through the narrow door, because many will try to enter but will not be able to. But he doesn't say that he will never will be able to, because it's the after on number 5 he will tell us that we will have opportunities as being reincarnationist uh, greed or belief that we have, or conviction that we have. We all have another chance to walk through that narrow door. The narrow door might be, for example, be will be shut temporarily until we are trying to walk through the wide path, the easy way, looking only
Mhm.
to receive the material awards and satisfy our own earthly pleasures, instead of working towards our spiritual and moral evolution. So it doesn't say yes or no, because we will have a chance again, as we study in the spiritism, that we will have a chance of going through an opportunity to go through the narrow door, so we can learn to appreciate the opportunities of growing and becoming better spirits as well. But he's actually saying this to us on the second on the other the following slide, saying that this is the current state of Earth, because we are still a planet of expiation, of trials and atonement. But as we are transforming, and we are going towards a better path of evolution, transforming to the planet of regeneration. More people will be this pathway of goodness will be more visited, and will more walked through, because we'll
Mhm.
be able to understand and be closer to God, and then we'll be able to be, like he even says, to be with those who have all the prophets in the kingdom of God. He says Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and all the other, you know other, or even our loved ones that have maybe gone through a better opportunity, not better opportunity, but better um, they made the most of the opportunities they had to achieve this state of improvement. So we will have a chance again, if we look in this parable only with um, material point of view, or physical point of view. It seems like we are doomed. If we try to walk through, if you walk through the wide door, that's it. It's going to be shut for you. But looking from a
Mhm.
spiritual point of view in a spiritual life, it explains to us that we will have another opportunities as well. That is not to say that we should always going through the wide door, forever, because our time is running out. As we said, many are many are called but few are chosen, so we have to make that opportunity and try to be to make ourselves worthy of being chosen, as we get awakened by this message, and we get awakened by the invitation that we receive, the calling that we receive. And it's interesting as well that he says in the last sentence that he uses in the parable, he says, "Those who are last shall be first, and those who are first shall be last," which is also another way that we will see that will be the need for us to be humbled as well, not to exalt ourselves, because there's another passage that he says that um, who humble themselves will be exalted, and those who exalt themselves will be humbled. So it's I think coming to that idea as well of being humble, living a life or going through the narrow door and accepting the challenges as we have as we walk through this life. Does that make
Yeah,
sense? Am I
yeah, lots
rambling
of
too much?
things. No, it's really good. Thank you, God, because if we don't, it would be really hard to believe in the justice of God if we didn't know, or if we didn't consider reincarnation and other opportunities, because then it would be just, if we chose the wrong door, that's it. So for the eternity. But as we know and we understand with the spiritists, we all have past lives and future lives as well, and everything makes sense if we think that way, because even though at the moment, if we don't choose the right one, we'll have a next opportunity. So I think we have time for one more. um
Hmm.
what time, or should we
Yeah,
go to the,
I
what do you
think
think, Penny?
I think we should go to the spirits book and leave
Okay,
those to the next.
okay,
Yeah, leave. So
we
there's a
can
lot
do
of
that,
things to digest and think about
to
in this
unpack,
one.
eh?
Yeah,
Yeah,
which
okay,
which door are we walking through? What are we doing with the invitation? Are we going to the feast, or are we
yeah,
rejecting the people, the servants, the prophets, the messages that we receive?
yeah. Are we
Yeah.
choosing to RSVP and actually be there properly on that
Or are
wedding?
we just doing those Facebook invitations that we say, "Oh yeah, I'm going to
Yeah,
the event," and they never show up.
that's true.
The our very famous invitations on social media. Yeah, we say, yeah, sure, I'll be there, and then only half of the people that say they would attend, they would actually go.
That's true. But yeah, things for us to think about and to
Hmm.
make better choices. So in the Spirits book, we almost finished the chapter 7 of book 2, the Returnal to Corporeal Life. And at the moment, we are reading Forgetfulness of the Past.
The last item, yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, it's I think it's a long one, isn't it? It has been a while that we've been going through
Yeah,
this.
yeah, it's kind of coming towards the end of the second part of the spirits book, because the first part is more about the universe, the general uh, uh, part of creation, and then the second one is talks about the spirit life, and of course spiritism being the science that study the nature, and the origin of the spirits and the correlation with the physical world. So it's quite long to study the spirit life, and this particular one, which kind of sets us apart from any other Christians that that talks about the return to the corporeal life, which is the reincarnation part of it. So this particular tenet, or this particular um, basic idea of spiritism differs us from others. So I think it's quite important to expand and to. I think Allan Kardec once again shows his genius on how to explain and to to teach us. So yeah, it is a long chapter, but it's a quite important one to
Cool.
understand our return to the corporeal life.
Cool. So we
So just to
start.
remind everybody that you can send your comments. I can see there are a few people watching us here on especially on Facebook and on Instagram as well. So if you have any questions or comments, feel free to participate as well. Okay.
All right. So we start by question 395. Can we obtain any revelations about our former lives? Not always. Nevertheless, many know who they were and what they did. If they were permitted to speak openly, they would make curious revelations about the past. Mani?
396. Some persons believe they have a vague memory of an unknown past. It it appears it appears
As a fleeting, can't you see?
hang on. No, sorry.
Okay.
Something else started to come in on my ears here. So I'll start again. 396. Some persons believe they have a vague memory of an unknown past. It appears as a fleeting image of a dream, which in vain they try to retain. Wouldn't this belief simply be an illusion? It is sometimes real, but much more often it is an illusion to be guarded against. It could simply be the effect of an overexcited imagination, especially when you talk about dreams. It's something that it's not quite even through psychology. Correct me if I'm wrong. The psychologists of the family, or I mean, one of the psychologists of the family, dreams are not as exact as we like to believe, even coming, because there could be so many different things. Could be a remembrance of a past life, but it could be just a memory of a day, or a memory of this life, or it could be so many different symbologies as well coming to it, right?
Yeah, many times it's a production of our subconscious. So it's still us, but it's something that was in the past together with something of the day. So it could be a mix. And it's really hard to tell exactly the dream what was about, what it came from, because could be spiritual, could be from ourselves, subconscious, could be from the day. So we can't, it's really hard to point it out exactly if a dream was actually something from the past. Almost impossible, I would say.
Yeah, so we should be careful, like if we have a dream and you think, oh yeah, it must be, from a past life. It could be, but don't take that as a certainty, because that's what we study on this part of the chapter, the forgetful of the past, and what will be the advantage of forgetting the past, and what will be the
Mhm.
advantage of remembering what happened in the past, in the previous
Right.
life, as we talked about, not last week. There was a lecture, but the week before we talked about, if it happened in God is wise. It's following the wisdom of God, of the divine justice, and it's for our own good that we don't remember our past.
Mhm. 397. Incorporeal existences of a more evolved nature than ours. Is the memory of previous lives more precise? Yes, as the body becomes less material, they become easier to remember. The memory of the past is clear for those who inhabit worlds of a higher order.
398. Since people's instinctive tendencies are reminiscence of their past, then by studying those tendencies, can they know about the wrongs they committed? Undoubtedly, to a certain point. However, it is necessary to take into account the improvement that may have taken place in the spirit and the resolutions it made in its errant state or spiritual state. Their present existence could in fact be much better than the preceding one. Could it be
Mhm.
worse? In other words,
Mhm.
could persons commit wrongs in their present existence which they had not committed in the preceding one? That depends on their advancement. If they do not yet know how to resist trials, they could be drawn to commit new wrongs as a consequence of the position they themselves have chosen. But such wrongs indicate a stationary state rather than a regressive one. Because the spirits may advance or remain stationary, they do not regress. So I think that's a very interesting point. When he says, go if you go back one slide, when he's
Uh-huh.
asking about, if we study ourselves in this life, does that give us an indication of what we were in the previous life? I say yes, to a certain point. So, but you have to remember that life goes on in the spiritual world. If we study, especially this series of Andre Luiz, life in the spiritual world, we can see that there's a lot of movement, there's a lot of action in the spiritual world where the spirits can learn, spirits can have an insight into different ideas, into different feelings, into different concepts that they may not have had in the previous existence. And when they reincarnate, they might actually, you know be already a better spirit. They're just going through a new trial, a new opportunity to put into test what they've learned in the spirit life. So it's not as black and white as we tend to think in our limited intelligence that we have here, to think that, oh yeah, it's just a continuation, I pick up where I left off. No, sometimes this evolution, it can happen in the spiritual life. It can happen the opposite as well. You can be in a spiritual life in a position, if you choose to, that you will be worse off, and you have to go through different trials. And that's what he's asking in the continuation of the 398, asking if it could be worse, if we can
Mhm.
commit new wrongdoings that we have never committed before. Say yes, because sometimes you are a lot of the um, a lot of the wrongdoings that we do, they are circumstantial. We never had the opportunity of committing that before, so you might fall into temptation and do something like that. But that doesn't mean that you were a better spirit that regressed. As the spirits highly, very rightly pointed out, there is no regression. You may advance or remain stationary. So sometimes, even in this life, you might think, oh, that person was such a good person. He was always such a good kid, a good teenager, but he grew up and he became, so he regressed. In fact,
Mhm.
that could have happened, but he may not express those feelings or express those thoughts or express those actions, but they were already inside them. So they were never really in a position um, to how can I say?
Make that mistake.
Yeah, I was gonna say to escape that temptation. They never had that
Ah, yeah.
opportunity to escape that temptation, to avoid that temptation. So when their opportunity came, they did it. So that doesn't mean that they never had that thought or had that tendency before. So it's quite interesting to have that assurance that right now, we are in the best reincarnation that we've ever had. So
Nice.
we are,
Mhm.
at the moment, we are at the peak. That doesn't mean that we're going to go downhill, but we are at the peak of our spiritual evolution. It's just going to get better, like the last chapter that we studied, the on the gospel according to spiritism, be perfect. That's our goal, to be perfect, in every sense of the word. Of course, not in just one reincarnation, but we have the law of progress in our side, and that's where we are moving towards. Sorry, I talked too long.
That's okay. Really good
Do you,
explanation.
do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, just about the stationary state. I heard somewhere, I'm not sure if it was in a lecture or something like that, one of the spiritists one, that when we fully learn something, we can't unlearn. So if we made a mistake in some aspects of our life, is because we didn't fully complete that lesson. That's why I think that is what mean the stationary state. Because if we had learned completely, then would not make mistake on that area. And sometimes it's hard. Like there are parts to a area, or there are parts to situations, but the important thing is we don't go back, so we always go forward, and
And
that
we have
is good for us.
and we have that idea that it to make mistakes is terrible and is wrong, to fail. We live in a society that give us that idea of to being excellent, and to be the best, and to be the top of the class, and to be the top of the team. We have this installed in us of that guilt of not being the best, or but in fact it should, we, those who don't fail are those who don't try. So
Yeah.
if you don't try, you're never going to fail. So you have to keep trying. You have to fail, and you have to keep trying, because those failures are going to make you, you know, a better person, a better spirit, and learn more. So don't be afraid of exposing yourself into failure, but because you are going to fail. But it's better to go through that trial and learn from it than not go at all, because eventually you have to go through it.
Yeah, we can always learn from mistakes, from failing, as you said, and we can have two different ways of facing when something doesn't go well. We can complain and be sad and not liking it, or we can learn from it. What can I learn from it? How can I do better next time? And just keep going and don't give up. Cool.
Yeah.
I'll read the next one, Mani.
Yeah.
Since, since the tribulations of corporeal life are at the same time expiations for past wrongs and trials for the future, does it follow that from the nature of these tribulations, we may deduce the kind of preceding existence we lived? Very frequently, because individuals are punished for their particular sins. Nevertheless, we cannot make this an absolute rule. The instinctive tendencies are a more certain indication, because the trials that a spirit undergoes refer as much to the future as to the past. When the end that Providence has marked for their errant life has arrived, spirits choose for themselves the trials to which they desire to submit themselves, and which will hasten their advancement. That is, the kind of existence they believe most appropriate for furnishing with them the means to evolve, and such trials are always related to the wrongs they must expiate. If they triumph over them, they advance. If they succumb, they have to start over. Spirits always enjoy their free will. It is in virtue of their freedom that in the spirit states they choose the trials of their upcoming corporeal life. And in the incarnate states, they deliberate over what they will or they will not do, choosing between good and evil. Denying humans their free will would reduce them to the condition of a machine.
Just
In,
to just
yeah,
to make a point that this part is pretty much the sum up, the summary of of this part of the chapter by Kardec. So the other
okay,
part was a answer from the spirits, from the questions. Now I think Kardec is just giving us the idea of the choice of trials and expiations, and so it's kind of like, if you're trying to think of what we just read, it's gonna get there, but it's more like a summary of everything that we studied into this part of the chapter up to now. So
cool.
yeah, so I think it's quite important that he's of course giving us the idea, that of the importance of this gift that we all get when we are born. We are created as spirits, which is the gift of free will. We are free to choose. The
Mhm.
trials that we go through, but of course, with the other side of the coin is that there's a law of cause and effect. So whatever you choose to do, or choose to follow your trial, there will be a consequence to that as well. So yeah,
Thank you, Manny.
and it's
In-
quite long. So whenever you want me to read, I can continue reading if you like.
Okay. Yeah, and just because we stopped, I find really interesting when they talk about the instinctive tendencies, because really when we analyze ourselves, we can tell what our tendencies are. We can tell what's our personality, the ways that we usually respond to situations in life, and those and the type of trials as well. So many times we can see in life that we face some type of difficulties, and then we ignore them, and then after a few years again the same one and again. So I think it's similar to what we have in life. So many of us, most of us will face the same type of difficulty a few times until we overcome. So I think it's
Mm.
similar what happens in life to what happens in many different lives. So we
Yeah,
go through things that we
it's
need to.
just
Yeah.
a broader reach, yeah, for of what we go through.
Yeah, we all get exactly the lessons that we need. So my lessons may be very different from Mani's lesson, from other people's lesson. And but we all have free will, so we'll have make different choices as well. So I just keep reading a bit more. Integrated into corporeal life, spirits momentarily lose the remembrance of their former lives, as though a veil hid them. Nevertheless, they sometimes have a vague awareness of them, and they may even be revealed under certain circumstances. However, this does not happen except by the will of the high order spirits, who may allow it to occur spontaneously for some useful purpose, but never to satisfy vain curiosity. Yes, some of us may think that we were queen or kings or very important people in the past life. So that intuition might not be right, by the way. So it will
Mhm.
only happen if there is a need. And as it says here, by the order of high order spirits, it's not because of it's not only because we want that to happen. There is a need. There is a only if something good could come out of it. So it's very interesting, right?
Yeah.
Of course, um, of course, future existences cannot be revealed in any case, since they depend both on the manner in which the present existence is completed and the later choice of the spirit. Forgetfulness of wrongs that were committed is not an obstacle to spirit's improvement, because even though they do not have a precise memory of them, the knowledge they had of them during the errant state, in addition to the desire they conceived at the time to repair them, guide them through their intuition and inspire them with the thought of resisting evil. This thought is the voice of conscience, and it is seconded by spirits who will assist them if they heed their good suggestions. So if we just could listen more to our voice of conscience and check the divine laws that are actually in our conscience, then we know what to do. We know what is the right choices for us. So we don't actually need to know about our past lives to improve ourselves. It was a very good advice.
Yeah, because I said even though the our memories are under a veil, like we sometimes we have glimpses of that, and
Mm-hmm.
especially through our conscience, like you mentioned, if you do something wrong, something that, or something that is annoying you, somebody does something to you and that annoys you, what is that annoying me? What is that changing the way that I'm feeling at the moment? So there must be something to that triggered that feeling and trigger that action or that reaction that you had towards that person, for example. So it's something that we have to take a step, and in that when that moment comes, and try to work on that, and that will be enough for to help us to overcome those feelings. And yeah, it's quite a important formula for us, I think, to listen to
Mm-hmm.
the voice of conscience.
Yeah. Even though people do not know the acts they committed in their previous lives, they can nonetheless always know the kind of wrongs for which they became guilty and what their dominant characteristics were. They only have to study themselves in the present, and they will be able to discern what they were in the past, not by what they are per se, but by their tendencies. The tribulations of the corporeal life are the same are at the same time expiations for past wrongs and trials for the future. They purify and elevate us if we endure them with resignation and without complaint. The nature
Mhm.
of the trials and tribulations we undergo may also enlighten us about what we were and what we did, and in this world we judge the actions of a criminal by the punishment the law inflicts on him or her. Thus, those who were proud will be punished by the humiliation of a subaltern position, the self indulgent and greedy by poverty, those who were harsh towards others by the harsh treatment they themselves will suffer, the tyrants by slavery, the bad son by the ingratitude of his own children, the lazy by forced labor, etc. I think that's it.
Yeah, yeah. So that's the thing. Like it's quite interesting. The trials, tribulations that we go. You know, it just give us an idea of what we were and what we did, because that's the saying goes. The sowing, is free. We can sow whatever we want, but the harvest is obligatory. You must you all, or like you say in English, you reap what you sow. So whatever you do, there will be a consequence for it. So and be able to understand and have that in our minds, and when it comes to facing the difficulties that we have in this life, they must have come from a different life, from our past life. So yeah, and also just that idea, like the punishment. I think when you have that understanding of the trials and expiations and free will and cause and effect, the word punishment becomes a bit softer, because we understand that is not a punishment as such. It's more like an opportunity or a lesson that we must undergo in order to really learn how to, so that punishment will be once we overcome it, will be something that we won't see it as harshly as we do when we are suffering. So just like any, when we are when we are sick, we go through a very hard time, but when we are healthy, we might remember that time, that we don't feel the same pain as we were when we were recovering. So, and sometimes we, depending of course on the pain that we go through, we even forget about it. But even if we don't forget about it, we don't feel the same pain again. So it's a bit lighter. We see that as a process and not as an end. So I think sorry, you're gonna say something.
Oh yeah, just something small now. Um, just the connection between the past, the present, and the future. I thought it was really interesting how it says. So we are in the present moment, but we are expiating for our past wrongs or things that we did in the past, and then we have tries for the future. So it's all connects. We only have the present moment, but the past and the future are all together in a way with us the whole time. So it's really about using the opportunity to do the best right now, because the
Hmm.
expiations also are to balance it out, right? Because as you said, what we call punishment many times is just a matter of us getting even in terms of balancing what we did wrong what we did right, and then get to that middle ground and get there. So I thought it was really interesting the way that it says here. Plus, we have
Yeah.
to do with resignation and without complaint. It's not only going through our expiations or challenges. I think that's a big challenge, isn't it? Who doesn't
Absolutely.
complain? Who just goes through and just accepting it and doing our best and always being grateful? It's a big challenge for all of us, I would say.
Yeah. And with that, we think we finished chapter 7. And
Oh, yay!
next week will be chapter 8, which is the
From book two.
emancipation. Book 2, yeah, still book 2, emancipation of the soul.
Right.
Yeah.
Awesome. That's really cool. Cool, guys. Let me see what I've got here next. Yeah. So I think was really good um, lessons for us to take back and to reflect during our week. and really not only accepting the invitation, but being there and being fully there without complaining and with resignation. So being part of this big feast, right, Mani? Without
Yeah.
complaining and with resignation. And also being brave enough to, oh, sorry, to go through the narrow door and not the wild, which is much easier, but the recompense is not, the rewards is not the same.
Yeah, because sometimes if you go through the wide door, could be a wild door as well. It's be too wild in the
Yes,
wide door.
yes, that's true.
All right.
Cool. Thank you very much, Mani, for your participation.
No, thank you. We didn't have many comments or questions today, but I'm sure there'll be some probably tomorrow, and we will, if there's any a need, we can reply to those as well.
That's right. Can you please do the vibration and final prayer, Mani?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, no problem.
Okay, so put a big, nice picture for us. And thank you, Mani.
So in this moment, at the end of this gathering, that we come together virtually in your name and with our hearts full of gratitude for such a beautiful day, is that we thank God for the opportunity of coming together with brothers and sisters with the same goal, with the same ideas and the same desires. We also thank Jesus, our bigger brother, our role model, for being amongst us spiritually from the very beginning of the creation of this planet, but also physically when you paid us a visit to exemplify the true meaning of love, of charity, and justice. And here we now, when we gather and surrounded by those benefactors, superior spirits sent by you, we take this opportunity where we combine all our prayers and our thoughts, our fluids, our vitality, potentialized by the spirits that are here with us. And we offer this to our brothers and sisters that are in need, as we saw in this later part of the study. We still live in a planet of trials and atonement, where many are suffering for different reasons. In the effort of learning how to truly love one another and respect, the expiations and the trials are different, but the goal is the same. And as brothers and sisters in Christ, we pray for all of those who are suffering with the pandemic, be it as a victim of the virus itself or by the disencouragement, the stress, the anxiety created and sometimes explored by the media and the negative waves of thoughts that come around us. Let us pray for all of the people that are suffering in this moment. Also praying for those who are suffering with treatments that have been delayed. Also praying for those who have lost or who they believe they lost loved ones. Because in truth, we know nothing is lost. They are just in a different stage of their spiritual march, ascending the big ladder of life. Let's take a moment to pray and combining this prayer with all the different houses of charity in New Zealand, in Australia, in Asia, in Africa, Europe, finally arriving in the Americas, and creating in this way a big net of peace, imagining this day where the peace will reign on earth, where we make ourselves worthy of enjoying this feast of the kingdom of heaven here on earth. We take a moment now to imagine those who we know are going through different difficult times. Could be someone in our house, someone that we share a house with or home with, a workspace with, or in our school, universities. It could be someone that is close or far away. It could be a family member, a relative, even someone we might not be dealing with in a correct way, somebody we have difficulty. Let's just take a moment and imagine them in a big frame, receiving these blessings coming from above, in the representation of the spiritual friends, applying these fluids into all of those who are in need, exactly where they need it. And at this moment, we also thank our spiritual friends for being here in your name, in God's name, giving us this energy, these vibrations that we are receiving right now, protecting our homes from all the negative vibrations out there in the psychosphere of this planet, creating a shield or a bubble where we are able to keep it like that depending on our behaviors, our thoughts, and our feelings. So for this, we're all very grateful as we approach the ending of this closing prayer. And once again, praising God for everything that we receive as a gift, everything that is in nature, the sun, the wind, the rain, the trees that give us oxygen to breathe, the fruit that we eat, the flowers that we can smell in such a beautiful season here in this part of the world. We feel blessed by all the gifts we receive, that many days of our lives go unsung, go unpraised. We praise you, Lord. We thank you, Jesus, and superior spirits and friends that guide us. And with our hearts filled with gratitude, is that we come to a conclusion of this meeting. And let us all go in peace until we meet again for another Allan Kardec Spirits Group of New Zealand weekly study session. Thank you so much. So be it.
So be it. Thank you, Mani.
Thank you, Oceania. And I will be back next week with more study. And hope you guys
Yes.
enjoyed it. And don't forget to give us a thumbs up, share, like anywhere in this video. And yeah, be well.
Cool. Take care, guys. Thank you. Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.